welcome back to the Four Hauntsmen. It's been a long time. But we're back with Paul.
Hello.
And we've had some shifting here in personnel. Now we're joined by Joey, replacing Nathan.
No relation.
Only sounds a little similar, but a little bit different. And Drew from Inside Universal has taken a leave of absence. He is still officially Hauntsman, but for the meantime, not dialing in for this call. Conspicuously absent.
I think it's because we fired Nathan. I mean, Nathan had to take a leave.
Yeah, Nathan, he's history.
Dead to us.
Drew's still alive, but in the meantime, what we were going to do was make a Drew soundboard so we could just hit a couple of key phrases.
Oh, that's a good one. But if it doesn't sound like Drew's on this podcast, it's because, as the editor, I didn't do that.
We just insert a couple of Jason X's every once in a while.
Yeah, you got to do it in a couple of haras.
Yeah,
in here.
Yankees. So we are back. There's been a lot of news for Halloween Horror Nights. That's what we wanted to talk about here today. We wanted to try to get you like half an hour, 35 minutes worth of like a small snack or cereal to get your day started here and not overly kill you with information yet, because we still have a while to go in information season at Halloween Horror Nights. But we did have a bunch of announcements to date around houses and streets and shows. And there's been some other information out there, in the good old speculation map forum. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, I think we start with the official stuff, right? Like, they had an announcement a little while back that said that there would be, I think they said that it would be inspired by the 80s. This year, which kind of fed into some of the previous rumors that there would be a 1980s theme to this year's Halloween Horror Nights.
And I saw Mike carried that over today too in some of his responses, saying that everything is guided by the principle. I think this year that it's 1980s based.
Okay, we talked about that as a rumor off mic a while back, and I got to tell you, for me, that's a selling point. I'm kind of excited about that. As an 80s person, as someone who grew up in the 80s.
I did as well. And I will be hypercritical of every song that's out of the time period and every property. Your cornerstone property of the year.
Yeah. There's that.
Joey, any thoughts? 1980s?
I was there. Good year.
I was there too.
I remember I was born in 82, so... late 80s, I remember very well, but I'd say like mid to late 80s.
Okay.
I mean, I think, we've only gotten, and we're going to talk about this here in a second, but as far as licensed properties, we've only gotten 2 announced so far, and only 1 is actually set in the 80s. So I'm curious to hear, if there will be more 80s-based IPs announced. We'll talk more about speculation later. But as far as the houses are concerned, I'm curious to see how that theme plays in the houses, and I'm curious again to know if that's the theme. Like 25 we had Jack, 26 we had Chance, 27 we had this Festival of the Deadliest theme. Like, are they not doing an icon and just doing the 1980s as the theme? Like, that's it? Or
Ronald Reagan.
Max Headroom.
Yes, Max Headroom. I wish. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that should be a campaign. Maybe we should already make shirts, because I'm not sure anybody talked about that yet.
No, but first. Hashtag first.
They just have like a dare scare zone.
So the 80s, the first announcement that obviously it feels like it was like a year ago at this point. Big win for Universal. They've partnered with Netflix, and they're releasing Stranger Things as their cornerstone property. Not necessarily an 80s thing. It's set in the 80s. Didn't come out in the 80s. And we're getting Stranger Things Season 1. So, of course, that leads you to think that next year we'll get a sequel.
Yeah.
Thoughts about Stranger Things?
For me, I like Stranger Things. I like Stranger Things a lot. I think as a house property, I think it's going to be one of those like, oh, this is cool. I recognize this from the TV show houses, but it's not going to be necessarily anything scary, especially since it's season 1, right? At least in season 2. And I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but you had like multiple creatures, and it was a little bit bloodier, and you had the hospital scene, and you had a bit more in season 2. In season 1, you had like the one Demogorgon.
Yeah, I only saw season 1, so I should be set.
Yeah, you're good.
I got to be honest. Like, I'm halfway through season 2, so it's not that you spoiled anything for me, because
Poop.
the show kind of lagged out for me. And God knows anybody that follows me on other media outlets should know, like, I'm not a big TV person. So the first season captivated me. You're right. You basically have one Demogorgon, and that's kind of my thought. But I'm thinking we're probably going to see like 40 Demogorgons in this house.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not something that they've done badly with before when they've had to twist things or stretch things out. And you go back to the Exorcist house or the Shining house from last year. So I expect it to look top notch. What I don't expect to see, in case anyone is listening and don't know already, I do not believe that we'll see any of the characters from the show.
You don't think we're going to see a bunch of shaved head women posing as 11?
Definitely not.
I don't think you're going to see any children in that house. Hint, hint.
So in my understanding is that the Stranger Things house will kind of be you experiencing the event as the kids, so you wouldn't see any of the children. Same thing that you went through with like Walking Dead for many years.
Not sure how I feel about that. Again, I love Stranger Things as a property. I'm hopeful that the house is good. I think it's I think and I had the same reaction to Exorcist. I had the same reaction to I don't remember what the big licensed property house was last year, because Exorcist was 26, right? But
yes.
Yeah, but there was some licensed property house last year that I'm like, okay, like I get it.
American Horror Story.
I don't know, maybe. But it just didn't feel like it was terribly scary, right? It felt like you were just walking through recreations of scenes from the movie or TV series. So that's kind of how this feels like it might be to me.
That's all it's going to be. It's just going to be, you're going through, I'm guessing, the forest. I'm trying to remember season 1. The pool. They'll most likely have the pool scene. The upside down will probably be a good chunk of it. But I don't think the line's going to justify what's going to happen in there, at least for me. I'm going in with low expectations. But I'll probably come out happy, so who knows?
Yeah.
Gee, Kyle.
It's, I've said this before with other properties of Halloween Horror Nights, like Alien versus Predator and so forth. I mean, and I'm a big sci-fi geek and stuff like that. I don't consider Stranger Things a horror property. I think it's more sci-fi. It's very X-Files. I mean, if you were to build an X-Files house, it's the same thing as Stranger Things to me. It's not scary things. It's Stranger Things. And, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Universal pumps out, because I know that they're holding the property to a high value. So, I think it'll be cool to go through the sets. I'm not looking forward to being scared in that house by any means.
That line's going to scare you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be that one that you feel like you're about to go in the house, and then there's another switchback queue inside the building, like there was with American Horror Story last year. Yeah. That's Stranger Things this year. But you know what house I do think is going to be scary, or I'm hoping is going to be scary, is this Dead Exposure Patient Zero house.
Yeah, it should be ridiculous.
Because Dead Exposure, the first one, I think, was HHN28, I think.
Yep, I missed it.
But that was a freaking great house. I loved that house. That was probably one of my favorite houses that year. And so the fact that they're bringing it back, it sounds like they're changing a little bit, involving the catacombs and stuff like that. So that I guess they could reuse some set pieces. But the first house was great. So I hope this one's good. And I know it's just generic zombie stuff, but They did a really good job the first time.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about that house. Especially if it's as they've kind of pushed it out where it'll be pitch black for most of the house and only having flashing lights. I don't do well with the strobe lights in the houses to begin with, but if it's very dark, similar to like a zombie mortuary type dark from Hollow Scream, I'd be all over that, because that's terrifying. There's some of that element of being terrified or scared that's removed when you're in a conga line for the houses. But if it's completely pitch black, it doesn't matter if you're holding on to the people in front of you. You don't see anything that's happening around you, and that's scary.
And that's one thing that worked about the first one, is that it was kind of like this super dark house, but they just had kind of like flashing lights in some of the rooms, so that worked well.
I think if you have it super dark, though, on the flip side, you're going to have the problem the conga line's going to be 3 times as long.
Yeah.
And if certain ops people are in charge, they're just going to be screaming in there the whole time.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. Or you could conga line your way right out the door, which we did once in The Exorcist, and where it was the transition part in the house. We all walked right out of the exit door.
Oops.
I am looking forward to that house, though, for sure.
I am too. And I'm looking forward to this next house, too, Trick or Treat. I loved it as a scare zone. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, though, Kyle.
I love that movie, and I love the scare zone last year. For it being moved to a house, and I've said this, kind of on social media a little bit, like, I'm a little leery of how it's going to work in a house compared to the street. The movie takes place, for the most part, in the street, except for the scenes where Sam is kind of battling in the house. I know that they can pull it off, but, how much of it is retread from what we saw already, versus new stuff. I really enjoyed the street last year, and I think it's going to be tough to try to beat what they did already in an open environment. What do you think, Joey?
I watched that movie the first time on Netflix, probably it seems like a decade ago, and I was hungover in bed watching it, and I loved it so much. The next morning, I got up and ran to Best Buy when they opened and bought the Blu-ray. With that said, not looking forward to it. I just don't see it. There were certain things I felt like they didn't do last year, and I don't think they'll do this year, as far as how the movie's broken up into like different kind of like almost storylines. I don't think they'll go the whole way with the school bus without spoiling it. I think it'll be heavily on the vampires. And as far as Sam goes, like last year, it seemed like in the scare zone, he was more of a photo op, and they had him as the cute, cuddly version. But I'm really curious to see if they're going to go for the scares, actually have him with his mask off, jumping out all over the place. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, Kyle and I earlier today were talking about how I'm really not a fan of like unpopular opinion. But unpopular opinion, I'm not a fan of Trick or Treat the movie. Visually, I love it. I love the idea of it. I love the characters and Sam and all that stuff. But the film itself, like I'm just not a fan. Like it just doesn't connect with me. But I did love the scare zone last year. I loved the iconic imagery. I think it could work as a house. I think you can do. Yeah, some of it'll be retread, but I think they'll be able to do things that they couldn't do in the scare zone, like go in the house, or maybe have the school bus in the the valley or whatever it was in the movie type thing. I think there's opportunity there. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's definitely out there as something that has a lot of opportunity. I just think for return visitors that go to the event every year, I'm really curious what they can do to top what they did last year already.
Yeah,
more pumpkins.
In theory, I know they probably won't, but what they should do is probably just redo the scare zone leading into the house. That way you could kind of have like this all-encompassing experience. But they've not really done that well as far as like having a scare zone that genuinely leads into a house. I know they said they had like the Chance scare zone that was connected to the Chance house, but those were on opposite ends of the park. But that would be cool.
Yeah, they blew it with that one. So moving on, there was a new house announced today. Slaughter Sinema there's the New York, I'm going to get made fun of. Sinema. It's basically the B movie house, right? So we've got B movies announced as Pumpkin Guts, Amazon Cannibals, and Beast Baby, and it looks awesome. You know, the only thing that I think could make it better would be actually partnering with like Joe Bob Briggs,
yes,
or something to try to bring the house together.
That would be awesome.
It would be awesome. I am a huge Joe Bob fan and grew up watching a ton of these B movies. So I would love to see that house be as campy as it possibly could be.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, it seems like it is right up my alley. Like you said, Joe Bob Briggs and that kind of thing. And every once in a while they touch on it with the HR Blood and Guts. You know, there was this rumor of a B movie house for a while, and I'm almost glad they didn't do licensed properties, because they can go a little bit more overboard with it. Now, the sad thing is, at least the trailer that they released today doesn't really seem to indicate that they're going to loop in the usher or the director. Which is
it's funny because like in the posters,
yep.
they noted, like, you know, Jack Schmidt as a producer, and they noted Albert Kane as one of the directors, I think.
Well, they got look at the poster right now. Pumpkin Guts, directed by Jack Schmidt.
Were you calling it pumpkin butts?
Yes. That's even better.
That's a totally different movie.
I am buying a ticket for that movie.
Slaughter Shinamay or whatever he called his wrestler name. Amazon Cannibals poster is blocked, so we can't see who did that one. But
you know why? Because I is it blocked on the site?
Yeah, I'm on the site. It has the Pumpkin Guts.
Yeah,
poster.
at one point I noted today that they had a typo error on that poster. So I wonder if they're taking it down and fixing it.
Huh. Maybe.
Nope. If you click on it, it comes up. All right. So let me see if I can zoom in on it. Jack Schmidt directed that one also. Produced by Mike Gallo.
By all means, I don't believe that any of these past characters or icons are going to appear whatsoever. It would be cool in the Q video if they inserted some of the stuff with maybe those characters.
I want that Pumpkin Guts or Butts on a shirt.
We gotta, dude. That is the Horseman shirt for 28. Pumpkin Butts.
Pumpkin Butts. Yes. Someone get on that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that house. I really am. I hope they do some type of character, whether it's Blood and Guts or Usher or director or some new, you know, Joe Bob Briggs fake person. Because, I mean, you know, Mike Aiello and those guys are in our same age range, so they kind of remember that stuff too. And that's clearly what this is inspired by. Yeah.
You know, and so keeping in the interest of time, like, you know, we've got 4 houses announced already, and it's the end of June. But we also had announced that there's 10 houses this year, which is one more. I feel like Spinal Tap. It's one louder when you need to go one louder. It's one more than they've ever had before. And the other, you know, at least information that's kind of floating in the interwebs is that for the most part, a lot of these houses are ground up properties. You know, they're not IPs. So, you know, we don't have much more to wait for IP houses to go. You know, the rumor is, at least out there, you know, to stay with like the 80s, is potentially Poltergeist would be a house.
Rumor. Yes.
Yep. That's a rumor. Well, it's not confirmed. You know, there's the talk of Halloween being out there has been kind of bandied about, although I still keep hearing that that's not happening because of licensing properties. As much as people, you know, you kind of assume right away that it's you know, a Blumhouse production, but I believe the distribution is through another company that is not affiliated with Universal, so that's why it potentially would not be out there.
Yeah, I think they still have like a shared rights thing with Dimension.
Yeah. And then you potentially have, you know, we've heard either just an entire Happy Death Day house or Blumhouse featuring Happy Death Day. I love that movie.
I watched it. It was good. I can't do it though.
I think I've watched it like 5 times now. I mean, I can only imagine the merchandise that they'd be able to sell too, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Did Did any of you guys see Trick or Treat? Not Trick or Treat. Truth or Dare?
Yes, I have actually.
Actually.
I was over in bed, and the next morning I got the Best Buy. Why do you ask?
No, I meant Truth or Dare. Speaking of Blumhouse films.
No.
No.
Yeah, that came out a couple months back. You know, I thought that was pretty good actually. Truth or Dare. I don't think it did well. But because no one's talking about it, and it's certainly not a property that they're mentioning for the film. But I think it could be an interesting part of that house if they were to, you know, to incorporate it into a Blumhouse 2 house. It's a lot of houses. So what other speculation houses are there out there?
So for Universal brought up properties, we have what I'm looking most forward to, I think, is Scary Tales, Wizard of Oz type house, or Oz based house. We've seen Scary Tales multiple times through Halloween Horror Nights. Most recently, I think it was 25 in the Scare Zone in the front of the park.
Yeah, I think
with,
so.
Different characters.
And that would be another callback to 18, because I think there was a Scary Tales house at 18.
Yeah, the Oz characters. I mean, obviously, Paul and I are making this journey back to the Oz Mecca land again in September, ironically, the week before Horror Nights. But Oz could probably be really terrifying in the right situation. So I would really look forward to that.
I mean, that sequel was scary. The Return to Oz.
Yes.
Yeah, that scared me.
Yeah. Then as far as the other, houses that are rumored out there, we have a carnival house, which, if it has clowns in it, I could see it being terrifying. An alien themed type house.
There you go.
Not the movie Alien, because of course that's a Fox property, but generic aliens, as long as they're not kind of hokey aliens like we got last year in the Scare Zone, that would be pretty awesome. And I think that's it for Universal ground up properties for houses, unless I'm missing something.
Well, I know, or I don't know anything. I heard the other coast could possibly be getting a classic Monsters maze.
Yeah, I would really like to see that.
Me too.
Yes.
Well, so those are the houses, right? So
we've got houses.
What about streets, scare zones?
So for scare zones, we already have announced The Harvest, and we have announced Twisted Tradition. So it seems like we're really big on that whole New York type area. Not New York, but the Central Park. I think that's Central Park, like the crossover between the front and the back of the park from Hollywood towards the kid zone. No, not
where Trick or Treat was Central
Trick or
Park.
Treat last year, and
okay, never mind.
Again, kind of like a traditional type of zone over in that area. Could expect more pumpkins, probably Pumpkin Man, I would imagine, and Manus Bush. The usual characters, the usual suspects. And then the other zone that was announced that seems to be like fan favorite or demand was Vamp 85. So
did they say where that was going to be? Is that going to be in the streets of New York, like a New Year's Eve thing?
Yeah, so it's taking place on New Year's Eve. I have not seen confirmation online yet whether that means that it's New Year's Eve from 84 to 85 or from 85 to 86. I saw that question posed to the creative team online. I just haven't seen an answer. But it should be taking place in the New York area. So, where Purge was multiple years and, kind of that like an asylum, area that they had from 25. So it's a big scare zone, and it's more vampires. I think the online community is in love with Vamp because of Vamp 55. And Vamp 55 necessarily wasn't always scary to me. It was more of like a selfie type zone, or there was always, hamming it up taking place in that zone. There were some folks there, like the MVP of Halloween Horror Nights was scaring in Vamp 55 and did an amazing job. But Vamp 85, I think people are probably more in love with that concept that weren't alive to experience that part of the 80s, you know, and kind of romanticized it, just like, you know, I think my generation romanticizes like Woodstock in the 60s and stuff like that. But I don't know. That's what's announced so far. What do you guys think?
When it comes to scare zones, I mean, this is just me. They don't really do anything. I mean, at least last year they didn't really do anything for me. The outside the trick or treat, which every time I walked through, I was getting strong vibes of Nightmare for Christmas for some reason. I'm guessing it was all the pumpkins. But the one with the crash spaceship was cool to walk through, but everything else just seemed like it already been done, just reskinned. You know, from the last few years I've gone to Orlando.
Yeah, that's kind of like the no, don't get me wrong. I actually am interested in the three houses or streets that they've announced, but I do think that the Harvest kind of seems like they're going to reuse some of the things from the Scarecrow house.
Oh
last year. You know, Twisted Tradition sounds like your regular Halloween iconic imagery type thing. You know, now you guys, and we've talked about this on the show, that I don't live in Florida, so you guys have a bit more experience of going to the event, both at the beginning and throughout and at the end, whereas I'm pretty much like opening weekend and then I don't go back to the event. So Vamp 55, just like, I didn't love it. Like, it was fine, but it didn't blow my mind. But I know by the end of the year, it was a lot of people's favorite scare zone, and it's kind of got this following to it. So I think Vamp 85 is probably pretty exciting for them.
Yeah, I think people are over the moon about it. You know, by the way, I just want to go back to the Harvest thing, because the description about the Harvest, and it, you know, the speculation is that the Harvest will be kind of like where the Selfie Zone was last year, you know, with people from like Ash versus Evil Dead and The Purge and, you know, Shining characters and everything, kind of everybody out there for photos and scaring people as they traverse from the entrance towards this, you know, the New York section of the park. But they kind of, you know, the description is you're going through an old barn. Its walls are decorated with ominous objects and images from each house, hinting at the horrors to come. So I think it's pretty much going to be the same setup as we've had last year, you know, with just characters from houses, you know, that are represented this year in the park. You know, so I'm sure maybe, you know, is it Carrie Ann from Poltergeist? Am I even still getting the name correct? Or, you know, maybe characters from Trick or Treat right, or something else in there. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, okay. So I think as a selfie zone, that zone was really popular, and people like the selfie things. I know, not to get into the whole debate, but yeah, I mean, I take a lot of them. I know a lot of people do, and you know, that's what people are fans of right now. So I think they would be foolish to not have some type of selfie zone.
Yeah. So, Joey, any other thoughts on the streets? We spent a lot of time at 55.
Every time I hear Harvest, I think it's just going to be like a food drive or something. I don't know what's wrong with me, but
I think of Metallica.
Wow, yeah, I didn't think of that one either. No, I mean, I have, until I see it, I really have nothing to say. Like I said, the scare zones are at the bottom of my priority list when I go there. I like walking through them, but unless you really have, like, you know, that one guy, the MVP in the last Vamp zone, it was fun to watch him because he was amazing. But then other times I walk through them and nothing's happening except people. It's kind of that, like, the trick or treat zone to me last year towards the end of the event was, if you can't beat them, join them. And they finally all just turned it into like a giant photo op, like posing for photos and doing everything. So really it was just, I can just walk through them to the beer stand.
Yep. We have consumed an adult beverage or a few in those zones. So.
Yes.
All right. So the other zones that are not announced yet, that are strongly rumored and part of the infamous speculation map that's online, include at least one property that has been highly demanded over the years, and that's Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I'm not sure how that's going to be scary at all, but I can definitely see that being a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't see that being scary.
I think it'd be fun, though. But, you know, for me, and the only reason I think that may not actually be true, I mean, I think it would be cool to be true, but that's a lot of money on those types of costumes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, those were not like just your regular clowns with chainsaws. Those were all like big prosthetic
Those are
costumes.
puppets.
Yeah.
That's why the first thing I thought of was like they're gonna spend money on puppets, and that's not gonna happen. They're blowing all their money on Stranger Things. I mean, if you ask me, but I can't see. I mean, I could possibly see a knockoff of Killer Clowns, but I can't see a licensed Killer Clowns from outer space. Kyoto Brothers thing going on. So
It would be pretty amazing.
I'm not saying I don't want it. It's kind of hard to believe. I don't know. But then again, I also shot down Trick or Treat last year, so.
Yeah, they did a pretty marvelous job with the costumes last year for Trick or Treat also. Chucky, our favorite 0 F's Chucky. No F's Chuck. Could potentially get his own scare zone this year. And let me tell you, people love Chucky.
Yeah, Hollywood's done Chucky to death, at least when I was living there, to the point where it's just ridiculous because they'd be riding around on scooters, which I think a lot of it was for their own safety. But they had a puppet show every year. I was on a balcony. All he would do is just talk crap out everybody below him. And that was actually entertaining. If they could do something like that, I would just sit there with many a $12 beer and watch that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I would be okay with Chucky, actually. I mean, I'm a huge Chucky fan. So if they did a Chucky scare zone, I'd be okay with it. We said the same thing last year with Trick or Treat. Like, there's only one Sam. How can you do a scare zone? Well, there's only one Chucky. So are you going to have like 30 Chuckies running around the scare zone? Or are you going to have Chucky and Tiffany and other characters?
Have you seen the last Chucky movie?
I have not seen it yet.
I would go watch the new Chucky movie, then come back.
Okay. I'll report back on our next episode.
You're like, it can be done.
Yeah, I get it now. I'll report back on our next episode.
So, and wrapping it up for Halloween Horror Nights, get the words out correctly, our shows. And obviously we bid adieu to Bill and Ted last year. We are back with Academy of Villains this year. I know Academy's show last year kind of was wrecked because of the hurricane, and it just never came back the way that it was intended to. So we were stuck with kind of the Hurricane Irma show for the entire season. But this year, they take over the big stage towards the back of the park in Fear Factor. I don't think it's going to pull in the same crowds that Bill and Ted did on a nightly basis. I think Academy of Villains is something great to watch. I think some of the pleasure of watching it, or the vibe or feel, was because they were on, like kind of like street level when you were standing there watching that show.
Yeah, I don't know how it'll work as well.
Eye candy. I think they're going to get a big following, but I know what you're saying. When you walk by that area, you just see if people. It almost had that, almost like a rock concert vibe. I mean, it was just like this giant standing room, like pit area in front of it. I do see them pulling in a lot of people. Maybe not the Bill and Ted crowd, but they got a big following.
Yeah, there were a lot of people. I mean, obviously, like I remember 2 years ago, we went to the final Academy of Villains show instead of Bill and Ted, and last year we did the final Academy of Villains show also, and it was cool where people dressed up in like the Spider-Man costume and stuff on stage. But the show didn't change much for the final show, by the way, in case anyone's worried, curious. It's a good show. I don't know if it's a show that I stand around waiting outside of that stadium to get into, and needing to get a seat and situated and everything. Every year, I think for the last 2 years, I've watched that show probably maybe once a night, and I can see myself maybe watching that show like maybe once or twice this year because it's out of the way and in the back. And I think that might be a detriment to the crowds that they have and not having something to soak up those crowds. People would wait for Bill and Ted. I don't think people are going to wait for Academy of Villains.
Well, if it's the only option they have, but I got to tell you, I'm really glad they're not doing it on the street anymore, because I really did not care for how much that influenced the sound of those scare zones, first of all, and second of all, how much it really just blocked up that area so badly. They had like the police barrier or barricades and everything to navigate the traffic, the flow of traffic there. So I'm kind of glad that they're moving it into a stage.
Yep. I could see that point for sure. So we're almost at the point where we're going to wrap things up, but we just want to talk a couple things. So, we got the announcement about Stranger Things this year, and the big murmur off season was, Stranger Things would potentially come. And then the next big, kind of the 1-2 punch would be, we would be landing It, to take advantage of the popularity. I think it's still the biggest money-making horror movie of all time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, now we've got the buzz that It too has their cast in place, and, they're even showing what people look like in social media. But, I think, and we also lost American Horror Story, after this year. And I think, the big thing was like, that can't go away because they signed a 3-year contract. But I think we're starting to see like other properties, that Universal can't secure licensing for.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'm kind of not unhappy about that. So, with American Horror Story, I believe that it's tied to like the Fox ownership. And, with It, Warner Brothers is putting out their own haunted houses this year in California between It and Batman. And if you get more of these companies that are doing this on their own, it certainly, dries up the ability for Universal to license other IPs going forward.
I'm looking at it. I mean, okay, here's my take on it. The whole Fox deal. That's not even done. I mean, you got Comcast and Disney bidding on it.
Well, it's done now. I don't know if you saw the Disney, re-up their piece.
They re-up their bid, but can't Comcast counter that, or
no? Because I believe that at the last yesterday, and I could be wrong, but I believe that they accepted the deal in principle yesterday. So they were looking to move forward for government approval now.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, that's going to hurt them a little bit, but what I think is going to hurt more is Warner Brothers has the biggest film library of all time. I mean, Disney might beat that now when they eventually own everything, but owning New Line Cinema, which put out It, that's huge. I think what they're trying to do is, because last year they started this whole little, $50 behind the scenes tour at night, no mazes, you kind of just walk around the sets, which for someone like me is cool, and I wanted to go last year, but I wasn't going to fly out to California. This year, I have to go out for 2 weddings at the end of October. So I wasn't really looking forward to going to Hollywood Horror Nights, but the other day when I saw this announcement for the WB tour with the Batman house and the Pennywise house, I lost it. And I honestly feel like they're looking at this. If you look at the concept art, in between the two houses, you even see Freddy Krueger, which is New Line Cinema, right? I think going forward, this is kind of a test right now to see if this sort of thing could take off and if they can go up against the big boys down the street at Universal, because Warner Brothers has a pretty big horror library. And if they could pull a Halloween event as well, what's to stop them from just doing it themselves and not licensing out any of their, characters anymore?
Yeah. There's money in them, their hills, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Freddy Krueger, or Nightmare on Elm Street. That was one of the properties that was long rumored for Halloween Horror Nights this year, to do Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. There's money in the hills to be made, but I think what we've seen locally, at least in Florida, is a lot of these mom and pop places can't compete because they don't have the capital. But if you are doing business as a Warner Brothers, I mean, hell yeah, there's tons of money to spend on this stuff because there's a ton of money to be made in return.
Yeah, and the one thing that's sticking out to me about their announcement the other day is I feel like if Universal or Knott's or any independent, house went to Warner Brothers and said, "Hey, I want to do a Batman-themed Halloween maze," they would just laugh and slam the door. But they're actually doing it. I mean, they're doing a Batman-themed Arkham Asylum Halloween maze. And if you read the description, it sounds awesome. And I'm like, you would never see that anywhere else. And just thinking about all their DC Comics villains, they have so much to work with. They've 13 nights this year. I'm hoping it takes off. I'm hoping when I go, it's packed, because if they go forward, they have so much possibility with this. And I think I'm just more excited for this event than I am everything else I've heard thus far. It could be because I'm a huge Batman fan. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. If I could figure out a way to get out there, I would go, because I'm super excited about that idea. So hopefully it does well for them.
Yeah. Well, it's not such a bad thing to have, Universal developed properties at Halloween Horror Nights again too. I mean, that's the one thing that I truly enjoy about Howl-O-Scream, and I think Knott's, I don't want to say widely accepted as kind of like the premier scare event out in California, also, and it'll be fun to see how this plays out.
And Joey will report in when he experiences it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we'll be experiencing a bunch of stuff. Paul and myself are going out to California at the end of July for Midsummer Night Scream.
Midsummer
Scream? Midsummer Scream. And they do have like their Hall of Shadows, which is expanded this year. It's huge. Where you get to go and like kind of smorgasbord or samples of a bunch of the houses that are West Coast based, as well as scare zones. I know Six Flags is making their way out there this year too with their Fright Fest scare zone and all that good stuff. But we'll be able to sample a bunch of things, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of the stuff up there promoting the It House on the Warner Brothers lot as well. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that closer to time and the things we're excited about, and like I said, report back on our experiences. But before we wrap up, do want to say that if you liked the show, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter at Four Hauntsmen. And anything else from you guys?
That's all I've got for you guys here today.
All right, well, we are back. So thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you again next year.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.